Judy Garland was a little girl when she started out down the yellow brick road. She became in time one of the greatest stars in Hollywood, with her big singing voice often described as brassy, powerful, effortless, and resonant. Maria Callas once said that Garland possessed the most superb voice she had ever heard, while singer and actor Bing Crosby said that no other singer could be compared to her when Garland was arrested. Little Girl with a Big Voice became MGM darling, starring in some of the greatest films and classics ever made: Money, Fame, Concerts. She even had her own TV show, but when Judy Garland died in London, there was a little of that left, only pain, vulnerability, and memories. In one of her last live appearances at the Talk of a Town in London, she couldn't finish Over the Rainbow, and the audience threw dinner rolls at her. Her voice declined severely in the last 2 years of her life. She had only better days, and she knew it herself. In the last years, it was her soul that audience came to experience. That was long after the peak of her talent, long after she became unemployable in the movies, long after she had been decreed unreliable on a professional basis. What it came to finally was Judy Garland and her audience together remembering a remarkable talent. The talent had been killed not so much by Judy herself, but by the studio system that raised her. As a teenager, she was already one of the biggest stars in the movies, and the child stars in those days were treated with brutality that passed for supervision. She was almost constantly on pep pills, sleeping pills, stimulants, depressants, getting up for a scene, coming down from a scene, losing weight, trying to unwind. Her last movie of any consequence was A Star is Born from 1954, although she also had an Academy Award nomination for her role in Judgment at Nuremberg in 1962. A Star is Born was a massive musical, the most expensive made up for that time, and it was a grueling undertaking. They were working Judy incredibly hard. They were going back to the same so-called solution from 10 or 15 years ago. If Garland was in trouble, or you thought she might be, put her on pills, speed her up, slow her down, run her like a clock. But Judy couldn't take it. She became a different person, an absolutely different person when she was on dope. I think perhaps in the final months of shooting A Star is Born, she finally passed over that thin line. A Star is Born was a box office flop. Judy went to Hollywood one last time in 1967 to work in the Valley of the Dolls. It was even rumored that Suzanne, the author, had modeled one character on Garland. She never made a picture. She was fired just after a few weeks in the cloud of charges and countercharges. She was late or never came to the set at all, according to the studio. She forgot her lines. She was in a state of emotional crisis. Judy, of course, told another story. She was raised in the time when the studio took infinite pains to obtain the perfect take of a scene. At her studio, MGM, this was particularly true. MGM films aimed for a gloss of perfection. Scenes would be shot again and again, with particular care taken to protect the image of a female starlet. This time she was working with television actresses, and 3 takes on television was considered to be excessive, so there was also a clash of a working routine. She never worked in Hollywood again. She had triumphed later in 1967 in a series of concerts in the Palace in New York and the Opera House in Chicago and elsewhere. Towards the end of her career, Garland's fame and money were both fading. Her daughter, Lorna Luft, wrote in Me and My Shadows, a family memoir, that by the mid-60s her mother was homeless, broke. She was singing in bars for just $100 at night. Judy Garland should have been a wealthy woman at the end of her life. After all, Judy starred in The Wizard of Oz, one of the most culturally important and successful movies of all time. The image of 16-year-old Dorothy Gale was a symbol of Hollywood. In the late 60s, when Garland was in her 40s, she was destitute, robbed, and deceived, near homeless. She was suicidal and broken down. Since she was a young girl, Garland's insecurities dominated her and were only elevated when she felt adoration from the audience. Whenever she experienced a setback in her career, she always staged a comeback. Whenever she gained weight, she focused on trying to lose weight. Whenever she canceled an event, she played a long engagement of concerts to make up for it. Garland was a star since the age of 16 and didn't really know how to be anything else. The stress of Hollywood had destroyed her physically and led to nervous breakdowns, but it still was the one thing that brought her happiness. Her status as an icon icon was so big that she couldn't stop performing for her fans, even when her voice and body were failing. The stress of performing is one of the tragedies that led to her death, but her refusal to stop is what she lives on as an icon to date. Her life as byproduct of Hollywood machine was hard, as she freely admitted in 1967. Do you know how difficult it is to be Judy Garland, and for me to live with me? I've had to do it, and what more unkind life can you think of than the one I lived?
If you like this video, be sure to subscribe, follow me on my Instagram account, and support our channel by becoming a patron on Patreon, and with a bunch of rewards help us creating together a great content with your favorite artists. Bye.